just like to say I'm absolutely delighted to be invited to speak here. I'm an engineer, so an engineer speaking about literacy is fantastic. But maybe you'll see as we go through maybe some of the problems that we face as we try and guide our engineers towards some kind of, towards information literacy. But the title I've chosen is actually quite telling in a way. I've chosen to remove the information part from this because it's not just their information literacy that suffers. I think we're going to find, hopefully you'll find from my presentation, that it's the actual literacy, underlying literacy skills that then support the information literacy. And then it's a struggle just to get these basic skills through to them, let alone the information literacy skills on how you handle language and information. So maybe before, just to get started, now people from my department might realise that this is an older timetable, if you like, but it may be a little bit of history maybe of where this development came from. In engineering, we have always had a problem with students who have problems with writing but also information handling. So it's how do they come from second level into third level, second level very guided, into a third level where it's much, much more independent, where we're trying to get them to uncover their own ideas about the world and how the world works and how they interact with it as an engineer, maybe design it as an engineer. So we've always had elements in our first year modules that try and help them communicate their own ideas, their own novel ideas. And the challenge really was that feedback coming back from students and staff up through the courses were, well, but we're still struggling with lab reports and language skills. So, you know, where does all this fit in? They can't structure their reports, they can't write the reports. What do we do? And we have to do something. So a few years ago, these types of modules were replaced, or at least supplemented, with something called the Learning to Learn module. Now, this is an institute-wide program. This is not just me. So there's certainly 3 or 4 people in this room that are just as qualified to talk about this as I am, because, if you like, we're the pioneers of trying to get this program delivered in the third level sector in IT Tala. Now, the program itself was designed by a committee, and the idea was to try and make sure that students were given these basic skills, information literacy skills, study skills, so that they were aware of the requirements going through and so they could make better use of their time as they went through university. So this really is about the transition. You take the theme of the conference. This is how do we get students to kind of let loose the reins that they did have or they felt they had, to basically be able to search for information themselves, to make up their own minds, to make up their own ideas, develop their own concepts, and then present that to the world as they go into their career. It's no mean feat. It's a very, very difficult transition for the students, and the trick is to try and make them realise just how important that this is. This is about their career. When they finish this, if they cannot write properly, if they cannot form an argument, if they cannot in some way structure their thoughts and get those thoughts across to the wider world, to society at large, they're not going to do very well when they get into a career in engineering. Okay? And that would go for any of the disciplines that would teach this, whether it's marketing, whether it's management or others. So just the broad themes perhaps of this program. Topic 1, preparing for effective learning. Topic 2, learning strategies. 3, group work collaborative approaches. Communication skills and interpersonal skills, self-management. And then right at the bottom, but given equal weighting, information literacy and academic writing. There are 3 major outcomes. Journal, a reflective journal. We'll talk a little bit about why that's important as we go on. Project work. So basically the idea is they do a group project and they have to then present and to then write a report based on that, again reflective of what they have to do in the courses that they're studying. And then multiple choice questions that try and help us understand whether they understand some of the topics that they've been going through. Now there are 2 ways of teaching this. One way is to do a whole bunch of presentations, a lot in there, so a whole bunch of presentations maybe on each of the core themes, and then ask them to write multiple choice questions at the end. Or we try and create something that maybe is a little bit more unique, that helps them understand the role of these skills in their future career. And that's the route that I chose, and many of the people that teach Learn to Learn in here have chosen. Okay, so it's about trying to create this moment where you trick them. unfortunately, into learning something that they really don't want to learn by using something else. Okay, and we'll try and address that as we go through. Okay, so firstly, we are talking a little bit of history. You've got to try and understand where this came from. We have learnt, certainly I have learnt, this is more personal observation than, if you like, global observation of our students. But as I've gone through my career, I've certainly noticed a few things about our students that maybe would begin to suggest over time, if I was listening, that maybe I need to change the way that I'm teaching my students. Students are strategic. That means that if you give them an essay and it has no assessment on it, they won't do it. And then they'll say, sure, how much is it worth? Well, it's 5%. Even at 5%, they begin to question whether they will do it. Do I really have to do that poster? It's only 5%. Okay? They are career focused. There's a star here. I did this presentation of the first half a few years ago, and it took me until about 5 minutes ago to realize why that star was there. If you teach first-year students, if you teach sixth-year, second-level students, that's about as incorrect as you could be. They are not career-focused, most of them. They are kind of drifting a little through their career, through their academic career anyway. And it's only really as they get more mature, first, second, third year maybe, as they get towards their exams, that they begin to realise maybe what it is that they want to do. And sometimes it's not engineering or business or something else. They make their minds up as they go. The star is there because that's our part-time students. We teach both full and part-time students. Our part-time students are more mature. They come in here, they are in a career, and they either want to stay in that and progress, or they want to do a different career. They are very career-focused. Unfortunately, our students, certainly the ones that we see here in ITT, have poor literacy skills. It's kind of the elephant in the room. We're teaching them how to write reports, but they can't write. And that is a big, big problem. So we're kind of dealing with that problem as well. They're time poor. Again, that's for the part-time students. I would argue our full-time students are time rich. They don't see it that way, but they are time rich. In that they might have a lot of courses and classes. They have 25 hours over the week, but that's not a lot. They generally don't have another job. Some of them do, but they generally don't have another job. But our part-time students come in here 3 nights a week from 6 to 10 in the evening. They have jobs, careers, family, and they're trying to learn at the same time. 2 completely different markets. And I can talk about the problems that we have with those 2 markets. They are generally unmotivated. Again, I could put a star there. Our part-timers are not unmotivated. They're very motivated. Our full-time students coming in, many of them are wondering why am I here? What do I really have to attend? And then choose not to attend, and then wonder why they do poorly in their exam. They are generally non-reflective, as many of us are, I have to say. Although as practitioners, we are taught to be reflective practitioners. That is, to look at what we have done. Is what I have done working for me, working in what I'm doing in my career, for my students, for my family? How can I improve that? What do I need to know to improve that? What are my gaps, my skill needs as I go on into the future? Our students don't do that. They do an exam, they move on. We say, have you seen this before? No, never seen that before, even though they have, just last semester. They are typically rote learners, and we could have an argument all day about why are they rote learners. Are they rote learners because of what we do to them, or are they rote learners because of what they do themselves? And they generally have poor analytical skills. So again, you might ask them to analyse a topic in engineering, and then we are surprised when they don't analyse it, or can't analyse it, or struggle with that basic concept. Okay? So that forms a picture. I'm sure there's lots more. Everyone that's taught students will have a different aspect, a different maybe set of these that they've built up. So what affects our students' learning? And I'll fly through these, otherwise we'll be here all day. For many years, right from the beginning when I first came here more like 8 years ago, but let's say 8, 9 years ago, a group in this college started something called the Engineering Learning Support Unit, ELSU. I'm just wondering if Kieran or anyone is here. But there was a group of people that started to look at how could we support our students, how could we make them more effective. So this work goes way, way back. And they started doing the learning styles questionnaires, so from America mainly, to basically get students to question, how do you learn best? What are you expecting in terms of your learning? if you're in a lecture and you're struggling, is that because you're maybe not an auditory learner? Maybe you're a visual learner and you're expecting a little bit more action or something going on. Okay, so in a lecture theatre, if a student is more visual, they're going to struggle if you put them in a lecture theatre for 12 hours or 24 hours a week watching slides. We have to understand they have both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. We expect them to be extrinsically motivated. We expect them to want to learn engineering because they want to be an engineer, or business because they want to be in business. But we don't often think about what about them? What are their motivations for doing this subject or for doing the course? What about the learning environment? Are there questions about how the learning environment is created? Now, we've created it, so we're in one right now, and we are actually going through what many of our students go through. We talk at them, and maybe our attention wanders somewhat because we can't focus for long periods of time. Time management. Are they good time managers, or do they know the skills of time management? What about their IQ and abilities? You can teach, my belief is that you can teach most students most things. It might take a bit longer, but you can definitely teach them many of the skills that we want to teach them. It just depends on what their natural ability is to do that and how long it takes. So if you're expecting them to learn these skills within one semester, 14 sets of classes, maybe they're not able for that in that kind of speed. Personal circumstances, what's happening at home? Are they with their family? Are they with a girlfriend? Do they have part-time work? What else is going on? Prior learning, what have they learned prior to this? How did they do at English, for example? How did they do at all these other subjects before they came into ourselves? And again, maybe my view of things, but this also should inform how we approach our students. Okay? What about our learning and teaching? Some of these have been mentioned. I want to draw attention to just one thing, although they're all linked. Kolb's experiential learning cycle is one thing that certainly we've used in Learning to Learn to try and make the process a little bit more useful to the students. We'll talk about that in a second. But every single one of these has resonance with some of the stuff that we've done either in Learning to Learn or in other modules as students go through. Okay? Threshold concepts was mentioned earlier as well. And then learning environments, and what I'll do is I'll flick through this, otherwise we will be here a while. Our learning environments have been developed over a number of years. They are changing, but they are as they are. They are often forward-facing rooms. They are often based on the presentation with not much interaction from the students. The students are required to take notes. They're required to do extra learning outside. They then do CA and then exams. In engineering, we are lucky. We also have labs, and that kind of breaks up the lectures somewhat. You will often see a disparity between a student's CA result for engineering and a student's class, an exam result, because they like the practical stuff and they're not so much keen on the theoretical stuff. Okay, maybe to bring out a few of these. We are modularized. Modularization has separated subjects. We teach them almost in isolation of each other. Not all subjects, that's not fair on some lecturers. Some lecturers spend a lot of time trying to bring links from other classes, but that's not always the case. They're generally tutor-led. That is, the tutor stands at the front of the room, talks to the students do what they're meant to do. I said student-focused. The star there is not for the part-time students. Some are, some aren't. Some are more theory-focused. So that is, we got to get through the syllabus, let's go quick. And then that's the way that the class works. They're generally unidisciplinary. That is, as an engineer, we have to be accredited by Engineers Ireland. And one of the criteria is, do students work in multidisciplinary groups? Okay. They're a mechanical engineer. We always struggle with that question. Okay. And the question is, are they working with business people, with marketing people, with other disciplines other than engineering? And as we found in the past, electrical engineering or electronic engineering doesn't count. It's still engineering. Okay. There are 3 codependent levels. When I say codependent, I mean they follow on from each other. Primary, secondary, and tertiary. They are utterly separate in the way that material is delivered. They should be integrated. Okay. If we are doing information literacy, we should be talking about information literacy that follows a stream from primary school all the way through to tertiary level, so that they pick up from one between each level so that they basically know exactly where they are and what skills they're acquiring. That's not the case at the moment. We expect our students to be independent learners. They don't come in that way. And often it takes 3 years, 2 to 3 years. For the best students, maybe 2 years. For maybe the least best students, it might take another few years before their maturity gets to that level, before they acquire that. And unfortunately, I'm head of department, should I be saying this? Unfortunately, our classes are exam and CA focused. That means they are summatively assessed rather than formatively assessed, okay? So, I'm going to start by just talking a little bit about where this cycle came from. I said Kolb's experiential cycle. A number of years ago, I worked with the learning support unit here to develop a process whereby students felt like they were doing something in communications but related to what they were doing as a career, as engineering. So the very first thing you'll see there is that whatever you get them to do has to be in context. So if they're doing engineering, it's no good putting a slide up that says these are the steps of research. It has to be, okay, we're going to research rocket science or something. Now let's look at what do we need to know about. And then they start the search. That's what I said about tricking students. They start the search saying, oh yeah, we're going to learn about rockets, but they're going through a process of research. So often I found it unuseful to say to them, we're going to learn how to do research. To the point where at the end they say, now I get it, you were teaching us research. Right? But they didn't get it at the beginning. That's good, I think, because otherwise they wouldn't have come to the class. We live in a media-rich environment, therefore we should use the media that we have access to, certainly as the Wi-Fi does settle down. I'll talk a little bit about the different sources. But if it's in context, and if I want to use a variety of media, that means I have to find sources that help the students interact in a kind of an active, in a positive way with the subject or the topic, rather than just say, put up a slide and say, this is what we're talking about today. I would much rather they found out about the subject themselves than me tell them about the subject, because that's pointless. I can do that all day, and still at the end of the first year or the first semester, they still wouldn't know how to go and do a piece of research. Okay? They have to be given an initial exercise. Now, this was learnt over years. You have to give them an opportunity to do something on the feedback they're given in the same class that they're given the feedback, not next semester. So often we would give them an end of term essay, and you would say, here's your feedback. Well, they just put that in a drawer. They don't read that. So if you then say to them, right, here's your feedback, very quick feedback, but now I want you to resubmit this piece of work, that means more to them than if you just give them this piece of work at the end with feedback on. Or worse, no feedback, because then they don't learn anything as they go through. They have to be given a chance to resubmit, otherwise it's absolutely pointless to them. They don't learn anything. And as you go on in their maturity, you have to let them talk to each other about their experiences of learning. So there has to be an element of self and peer reflection. So we have to go and teach them that skill as well. And I think going from primary to secondary to tertiary, that's the one thing that they have to be taught how to do. They have to be coming into each level comfortable questioning how they've done, questioning what they've done, and then trying to improve based on the feedback that they've been given. So they don't take it as a crushing defeat each time they're given a poor piece of feedback. Okay? So this was the cycle. Developed it maybe 4 or 5 years ago at this stage, and it actually went really well for 1 year, and then Learn to Learn came in and screwed it all up. So it's only just getting back to maybe where I was before Learning to Learn came in. So let's have a look at some of these skills. Reflective. This is a piece of work from a student. I have to say it was one of the best pieces of work I've ever been given in terms of reflective. But one of the things you'll see more and more of as I maybe go through is that when a student does something in Learning to Learn, we try and get them to reflect on, look, what grade did you get for that? How did it go? Was it difficult to you? Was it difficult for you to do this activity? Okay, if it was difficult and you didn't get a good mark, what skills could you use to maybe make that better? You're in control of your own destiny, not me. You have to do it the way. So they basically say, the submission, I had a good feeling about doing the required submission. And then I think because, and then they go into describing how they do it. I have to say this student came from Germany. They were an Erasmus student. I get the feeling they do this in Germany because this is their first attempt at it. I don't normally get this. Normally I get really fragmented single lines of yeah, okay. They have to do an element of study skills, but instead of just getting them to do the study skills, you basically get them to maybe do a mind map that helps them understand how all of this stuff links together. So they're not just learning about reflection, the learning journal, the academic year, note-taking. They basically kind of learn it as an integrated whole and figure out how it all links together. But they have to do that themselves. There's no point in me doing that. If they're going to write an essay, first attempt, this essay was about sustainability in Tala, so it was about the area around here. They were doing energy transport, food and community. Each group had to do a different aspect of that. And this was a first attempt. That then goes into, and I didn't choose the right picture for this, but this then goes into Turnitin. I can immediately show them how Turnitin views their submission. Is it copied? Is it, is there a source that this has been taken from? And say, look, you can't do that, and this is why you have to do that. So it's part of the learning experience itself. I use notes in Turnitin, so I can actually create my own set of notes and drag those in. Makes it very, very quick to mark a piece of written work. If I'm marking it in front of me, it takes a lot longer to do. 100% similar. Normally not very good, except that this means that this student submitted it twice. This is the second time that they've submitted it. Okay, so it's picking up on a lot of the stuff that's done. And then they have to use a different media to communicate. So there's no good just saying, right, we'll do 6 lab reports on all this stuff. You have to do different things. It has to be fresh to them. You can't get stale, otherwise they just give up and they just say, oh, I'm not doing that again. Especially when these things are only worth between 5, 10, 15%. Now, and I'm going to come to an end pretty soon, but our students have problems with basic literacy skills. There's no point denying that they can write fluently when they come into third level. They can't. So the problem is then, how do you develop a set of scaffolds to support the student? We can't teach them everything, certainly not in one semester. We cannot take a student who's poor at literacy and information literacy and turn them into a model independent learner, engineer at the end of that first year, as much as we would like to. So that's where the link with the library comes in, and the link with Philip and Gillian and others. All of these resources that are available through the library. And a couple of years ago, I kind of said, right, I've got this great idea. I'm going to do one as well. And so I invented this thing over a year, and it was meant to help with basic grammar. Have you ever gone into a classroom of young adults and said to them, your language skills are terrible, I'm going to teach you how to write good English? It was a failure, an utter failure. They wouldn't go near it. They would not accept that they were poor writers of English, even though the evidence was right in front of them that they couldn't write. And me telling them didn't help them. So I spent, I'm sorry, Gillian, we spent a whole year developing this, getting stuff from students. It's beautiful. I love this. But no one used it. So it's great. Feedback from the other resources, though, is positive because it's kind of bite-sized pieces of the puzzle. And I'm able as a lecturer to go in and say, right, we're going to look at plagiarism or referencing. And sometimes we take them down to the library. So Gillian gave a presentation to students last year about how to use the library and all those other things, so that they kind of get, okay, I'm going to do this piece of research. They already know what the research is. It's based on an engineering topic. Yep. And then they go in and they actually do it. Okay? So, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to fly through the pictures at the end, and then I'm going to finish, right? That work, the work that Philip and others have done in the library, and the work that I did, informed one important thing. You need really good resources, not around the really high-level stuff, because they exist. You need really good resources around the lower end of stuff. A student needs to know how to take notes. They need to know that they have to take notes in a class. Go into any one of the classrooms in the country. The best students will take notes, the others won't. They'll sit there, listen, and go to sleep or read a newspaper. And they don't even know that note-taking is part of what they should be doing. And you tell them. They say, really? Okay. Mind mapping, study planning. Again, how do I plan? You've got to be actively planning your week. Not just coming in here for 25 hours and doing what we tell you to do. 25 hours, what about sport? What about social? What about all of this homework that you've got to do? Homework? What homework? Is another thing, okay? So the new version of what I'm trying to do then is to build simple worksheets that you can basically deliver to students, tablet, but either by hard copy, tablet, smartphone. There's no requirements in terms of the processor. Literally anything they have, it'll go onto. And all they are is two sides. A first side that introduces the topic. We do this in the class as well. This is SQ3R. Scan, question, read, recite, review. Again, basic skill to help students understand how do I take a source, how do I break it down, how do I extract the information I want. The next step is then writing the essay, right? It's just part of that. And then on the back side, then there's just a bunch of exercises that they can do themselves. First one I do in the class, second, third, do it themselves. Next class come in, do a mind map. Okay, I'm going to skip forward a little bit. Do a mind map. Done in class. It's messy. It's not as nice as the other one. But this is 3 groups have gone through. There are 3 boards, 3 core questions surrounding food based on the exercise that we had done the previous week. And they're trying to make sense of it themselves. So of course it's messy. They have no idea about it themselves. And it's only based upon what they've read. Okay? If I go back quickly. Note-taking. And then exercises. TED Talks. If you're not using TED Talks, you've got to use TED Talks. Because TED Talks gives you access to really highly polished media on any level of information that you want. Okay? And then at the end of the day, celebrate your successes on the final project that they do. They write their report, they do their presentation. We do poster presentations, they do them in the foyer. Got a bit of work to do to make them professional, but they really step up their game when they think they're on display in public, obviously. So you trick them, again, into learning something, and then use our media. And I want to leave on this one note. We can do whatever we like at third level. We will turn students after a few years into to have the ability to process information. They will do what we ask them to do. They may not be setting the world alight in what they do, but unless you link primary, secondary, tertiary. I've been into the primary school and I've tried to teach this. I've been into secondary schools. There's a massive demand now for literacy learning, basic skills learning, SQ3R, Cornell note-taking, study planning. In the library, every year we have hundreds of students go through it from second level. It's crying out for people to come together and say, let's try and put some kind of link together. So I'm saying we should put a link together. Okay? Thank you very much.